I'm John Craven with BevNet, and I'm joined here with Ray Latif, our managing editor, and we're at the 2016 Winter Fancy Food Show here in San Francisco. So Ray, you just wrote the article on cocktail mixers. Had a lot of different cocktail mixer brands here. What did you see here?
Well, the category is growing really quickly. In the last year and a half, you're seeing a lot of expansion of craft mixer brands in grocery, in liquor stores, and it's interesting to see the amount of distribution, the amount of demand that's going on for these brands. A home-based cocktail preparation is something that just doesn't seem to be slowing down. Mark Mahoney from Powell Mahoney, he had told us recent data that he acquired told him that craft cocktail mixers are the fourth fastest growing category in grocery at this point. And it's interesting to see the number of plays. You're seeing cocktail mixers, you're seeing syrups, you're seeing bitters, you're even seeing the bubbling over, I guess, not really bubbling over, but the bubbling of craft premixed cocktails. Right. And it's something we saw not too much of at the show, but we heard a lot of rumors about stuff to come in 2016.
Seems like one of those things that they're all working on, or at least thinking about. I guess it maybe makes sense since obviously alcohol is the other piece of the puzzle for these products. Although it was pretty interesting when we were talking to Jordan from Q, and he was kind of saying I wouldn't do that because he appreciates the nuances of alcohol, but it doesn't seem like a lot of these mixer brands are too worried about that.
No, not necessarily, and a lot of them have already partnered with liquor brands, either marketing or actually putting it on their label. So, like for example, Owl's Brew had partnered with Famous Grouse and created a SKU that was specifically made for some of the Famous Grouse liquors, Famous Grouse scotches. And it's interesting to see the amount of flavors and the diversity of flavors and ingredients in these craft cocktail mixers, and it sort of speaks to the broader evolution of the food and beverage category, where these intense, indulgent flavors are popping up everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's probably the one big difference between this and just, what we see at the Natural Products Expo is that the intense flavor is something that seems pretty, apparent in like at least all the beverage categories that we're looking at. And, it was interesting looking at, some of these are sort of, flavors that have shown up in other food products, sriracha flavors and stuff like that. But, it seems like as some companies are going towards, 0 calorie, there are other companies that, if you want to call them indulgent and that they have calories, sure, but, it is much more about, some sort of new flavor experience. And usually it is something that's pretty intense. So, I guess that's, one trend that we're definitely seeing here.
Yeah, and it's things like, pretty common flavors like ginger, but ginger's popping up in things that hadn't been, that hadn't had ginger before. Kombucha is a good example. I mean, kombucha's always had SKUs that had ginger, but you're starting to see it in craft sodas. You're starting to see it in teas, things like that. So between ginger, chai, cayenne, matcha, and it's interesting to see Purity Organic expanding into a super premium tea line, 3 matcha SKUs, a mate SKU, and a Guayusa SKU as well. What do you think of those products?
It was really interesting when we were talking to Dave Minnick about the new products. He really sees those as mainstream offerings, which is pretty wild to think about. Mate and matcha and Guayusa even being something that is ready truly for the masses. And I think that's kind of a good example of another way that these indulgent or intense flavors are being used, which is they're being used, but in that case they're actually kind of being used in a lighter form. So I think it just speaks to how people are taking these things and applying them to the mainstream.
I mean, they're all flavors that people are familiar with, just not necessarily in that form, but it is something that's catching on pretty fast, and it's catching on fast in the craft soda category as well. Sip last year came out with a blood orange soda with a hint of jalapeno, and they raved about the demand and interest in that product. It's also interesting to see these craft soda brands getting into food service.
Sure.
We're hearing that there's a lot of demand for our artisanal brands in food service. Last year we saw both dry soda and Sip do tests at Starbucks. Pok Pok Som, which launched their Som soda, the drinking vinegar soda, they're getting some traction in food service as well. And I guess, once again, it just speaks to this interest in having more than just, say, a regular cola product in food service.
And I think that's something even just, as far as craft sodas go. I mean, there have been craft sodas like forever, basically, but craft soda 15 years ago was about making, a fancier cola and a fancier root beer. They were just trying to elevate the same experience.
Right.
Whereas now, you look at all these brands and they don't seem to be, afraid at all to have flavors that, don't match up with the top, CSD like mainstream flavors. Right. So I think that's something that, again, I mean, what people are looking for, both, when you talk about the trade, what they want to offer to their customers as well as the consumer, it is something that I think with a carbonated drink, we're looking for ways to say, hey, it's okay to drink a carbonated beverage. So it really has to be different. So,
and they're really pushing the envelope in that regard, using lavender flavored products.
Right. I mean,
well.
They're definitely, out there probably, there's plenty of people that drink soda today. They're not going to like, what a sip or a dry is doing. But right. That is where, those categories are heading.
Right.
So, interesting to see that really kind of manifesting itself here.
Well, that's all we have from the 2016 Winter Fancy Food Show, but stay tuned for much more coverage from the event in the coming days. Thanks for watching.